Welcome to Library Out Loud, a conversation about any and all things related to the Spokane County Library District. Library Out Loud is brought to you by the Spokane County Library District and our friends at STCU. Now, here's your host, Jane Baker.
Hello and welcome to Library Out Loud. I'm Jane Baker with the Spokane County Library District. My guest today I am super excited about. I have Sharma Shields, local author and all-around awesome person, author of a new book. Oh, I am so excited. I have to admit I'm a little bit awestruck, but Sharma, welcome and thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you here. Let's first clarify to people that we've met before.
Yes, and worked together.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You worked at the library for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And then you left us, which is all right because you've gone on to pursue such wonderful things. Yeah. But also, you are the president of our Friends of the Spokane County Library District. So
that's right.
We work together on that. And again, thank you for all the great work you do for us. And
well, thank you too. I mean, you're such a big part of the Friends group, and I love the collaboration we all have in that group, and all the library love there is really wonderful to me.
Yes, it's great. But thank you again for your volunteer work and for your advocacy and all you do for libraries. Okay, and now let's put that aside. Let's talk about your latest book, The Cassandra, just out. And let's see, how long has it been out now? About a month?
It came out on February 12th.
February 12th. A very snowy day, if I recall right.
Yes, my book launch was canceled here and then in Seattle. It was when Seattle was covered in snow. I ended up having to cancel in Portland that week too. So I've had a very small book launch so far and haven't made it to all of the towns I wanted to see in the Northwest yet. So hoping to get back to those places soon.
So reschedule. I know the Spokane one was rescheduled.
Yes, we already had that at the downtown public library, which was a blast. And then last week, the big event with Northwest Passages with Nancy Pearl, which was so much fun too. So
and that was fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was a great time. I love hanging out with her. She's hilarious and just always so intelligent and such a great reader, and always has wonderful questions about literature, and of course it's so exciting to talk with her about libraries too, because I know she loves them as much as we do.
Sure.
She's such a great advocate for books and for libraries.
Yes, and it was that interview that made me nervous for this one because I had some big shoes to fill there. But you know, I just wanted to. We wanted to talk not only as coworkers and friends, but also I want to talk about this book. Actually, I've not finished it. I want to say that I'm about a third of the way through, and I really want to just be left alone with this book so I could finish it because it is fabulous. So I'm not sure where I want to start talking about. There's so many things I want to talk about. But first, why don't you tell me about what is it like to launch a book? I mean, obviously you've done an enormous amount of work, an enormous amount of your heart and soul poured into a piece of work like this.
Yeah.
And then for it to go public and launch.
It's a strange experience launching a book. I mean, for me, a writer who has had a dream of becoming a novelist ever since I was a little kid, you know, it's a dream come true in this major way, but it's also just so anxiety producing for me as I approach the sell date of the book. And, this is the third book that I've had published. My first book, Favorite Monster, was a small story collection that won an award out of Pittsburgh. A small independent press published it in Pittsburgh. And so they gave me a couple $1,000s and they flew me out to Pittsburgh so I could have a beer with Stuart Onan, who chose the book. I did a couple of events there and that was so fun. But it was just such a small splash. and I will say the least stressful so far of all of the books that I've had. And then when the Sasquatch Hunter's Almanac came out, that was my debut novel, and that was in 2015. And, you know, it was... Before it came out, it was appearing in major magazines like O Magazine and Marie Claire and Vanity Fair.
Yes.
And then I suddenly realized, wow, this is starting to happen. I'm starting to really get more of a footing and have more of a writing career. And also realizing, oh no, my family's going to read this book. Like close friends are going to read it. You know, people that maybe hadn't read my work before really, because it wasn't really on anyone's radar. And that was a oddly terrifying feeling for me, because even though I think my work is really fantastical and strange, there's a lot of me in there. And there's a lot of my family in there. There's a lot of, you know, private things that I feel like a select few people will recognize. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to hate me, or,
no.
you know, and I really felt that with the Sasquatch Hunter's Almanac, because that was, in a weird way, the story of my family, you know. With this book, I think because I had to go to so many dark places as I was writing it, both personal places and things that kind of give me some worry on a more global scale, like nuclear warfare and environmental decay and those sorts of major themes that are throughout this novel. I think I struggled with a little bit of depression and anxiety for that reason, as this book was starting to come out. And you know, it's interesting. It's almost like each book I have a different reaction to the book launch process that feels very related to the themes of that book.
Sure.
So
Sure.
So it wasn't all happy, you know, glorious, you know, it's coming out into the world, it's this wonderful, amazing thing. It's also, you know, a lot of trepidation about how people are going to feel about it, if people will get it, if it will be too dark for readers, those sorts of things. So, yeah, it's always a strange, almost surreal experience when it comes out.
I bet, yeah. It's so open and
Yeah.
Wow, yes. So did you get comments from your family after the Sasquatch Hunters?
I did, but I was fortunate in that, in a way, I felt like it brought me closer
Gotcha.
to certain family members, and that there wasn't anger the way that I worried. And I think they also all gave me the benefit of it being fictional too.
Awesome.
So they knew not to take everything too
Awesome.
literally.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm so glad I write fiction for that reason. That's maybe why I never write a memoir.
Gotcha.
Because it does allow for that emotional distance. And, but yeah, some great conversations occurred because of it, and it ended up being a great thing. But I remember crying to one of my friends, just like, you know, what's going to happen when these certain family members read it? And are they going to feel like I was fair? Are they going to feel, you know, offended? And I was so glad that didn't end up being the case. And everybody was supportive, because I've heard the opposite can happen.
Oh,
pretty
well, I'm
easily.
glad it worked out for you then too, because I would certainly hate for anything to discourage you from writing. So let's talk about the Cassandra a little bit. I am invested in the main character, Mildred, immediately.
Oh, thank you.
I don't. That's what makes me not want to put it down. I just can't wait to find out what's happening next, what she's going to do next, what's going to happen to her. How do you develop the character like that? Is she based on somebody you know, somebody yourself?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of Millie is based on myself. I did think quite a bit about the year 1944 and her era. I thought quite a bit in which she grew up, and I thought a lot about my grandmothers. And I also was really inspired by certain characters in different novels. For example, Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. Characters who are both, you know, have a certain power to them, but are also very vulnerable and very and powerless. And I wanted Mildred to have that too. it's funny, as we, when we first sat down, I was telling you that I like her. I like Mildred. But I have talked to some people that, and even reviewers who say, I really like the book, but she frustrated me sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I do think, sometimes I don't make any character I write really perfectly likable. And I think she is not only unlikable, but unreliable in a lot of ways, too. And I like writing really complex women who can make, great decisions and make really poor ones, who can be, exceptionally moral and also exceptionally cruel. Because I think that's closer to the truth of who we all are. And I know for a fact that a lot of some of my worst qualities I put in her. So when people, are like, well, gosh, she kind of frustrated me sometimes. I'm like, I know, because I frustrate myself sometimes, and I know that that's her too, So, yeah. So she was really fun to write, and also painful to write in a lot of ways, because she undergoes some, and also create some serious trauma in the book.
Yes,
but,
yes. Yeah. Well, there's lots of things going on in the book we need to talk about, and we're going to do that in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back on Library Out Loud.
Welcome to Tom Sawyer Country Coffee.
Tom Sawyer Country Coffee only roasts the finest organic coffee for our signature blends. Enjoy a cup at our coffee shop and local businesses and organizations across the region.
I'm Tom Sawyer, and we choose the Pacific Northwest.
What? You haven't been to the library lately? Stop in today and see that the library is more than books. Spokane County Library District facilities feature on-site technology, including Wi-Fi, computers, and printers, as well as free use of meeting rooms. The Library District offers events and programs for all ages, from story times to career development and employer classes to Social Security workshops. Our staff is well trained and happy to help. Find out more about your library at scld.org.
The economy is getting stronger. Banks are lending again, and interest rates are at historic lows. Now is a great time to buy your dream home. The caring and knowledgeable professionals at Homes for You have been helping people just like you for over 20 years. They take the time to listen to what you want and will help you find just the right home in Washington or Idaho. Real estate is what we do at Homes for You, 928-5782, or visit online at homes4uspokane.com.
And welcome back to Library Out Loud. I'm Jane Baker, along with Sharma Shields, and we're talking about Sharma's latest book, the Cassandra, the latest book. Don't you love that?
I do.
Do you? I do too. I'm really loving this book. There's a lot of things going on here, and there's topics of discrimination, of sexism.
Yep.
And you are not old enough to remember a lot of these things, so you've really done a lot of homework on making it as authentic and real. Where did you start?
Well, I think the first place I really started was probably looking online at the Voices of the Manhattan Project, which is this amazing website where they have archived all of these interviews, really detailed interviews with various people who worked at Hanford. And they interviewed everyone who worked there, from a construction worker, the chefs, to all the way up to the leading physicists and generals that were involved in the Manhattan Project. And I found just really fascinating information there. And that was probably one of the things that first caught my eye, was an interview with a man who was talking about how Hanford was a really dangerous place for women in that time, and talking about the rapes that had occurred there.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started wondering about Hanford back in that era. Originally, I was thinking of writing almost like a Mary Shelley Frankenstein style novel, but having it be contemporary, set in 2019 and probably somewhere in Spokane. But when I decided to set it in Hanford and started reading about Hanford, I booked a tour of the Hanford facility, and I ended up taking a bus all through the Hanford Reach, and we went to the B reactor and had this really elaborate, amazing tour there. And my voice is starting to go out, sorry. I have a little bit of a cold today. And I was so just fascinated with the signage and some of the posted information they had from the 1990 or 1944, 1945 era when Hanford was first being constructed, that I realized I wanted to set it just in that time and have it really focused on that time frame. And then all of a sudden I was becoming something I never thought I would be, which is a historical novelist, when I'd never ever thought about writing such a thing before. But I think it became so fun to think about that time period because I started thinking about the stories my grandmother had told me about growing up in Washington State at that time. And I started thinking about Omak and Okanagan, where the book starts, which is where my mom is from, that area. And it was just fun to look at it from this completely different lens that I'd never considered. And I just, I checked out a lot of books on Hanford. I took so many photos on that tour, and I just kept revisiting them. I had already started a draft of the book before I went on that tour, and I scrapped that draft and started over again entirely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It is fun to read. And know the locations, because you mentioned Omak and Airway Heights and Medical Lake are mentioned, and it's like I'm reading and it's like I know, yes, I can see this. Same with Hanford when you talk about the bus drive-in and the shuttle cars, cattle cars.
Yeah, the cattle cars. They call them,
I can imagine that because I've been I haven't been to Hanford itself, but I've been through the area, so you know the landscape and can imagine it. And that's a lot of fun for someone like me to read. So it must have been fun to write too.
It's fun for me to write, and I feel like because I grew up in Spokane and never really left the Northwest, I always intended to. I just, I kept applying for schools out east, and I would never get into them. So I just, I went to UW, and then I went to the University of Montana for graduate school, and then moved back home eventually, and have been back, in the inland Northwest for 10 years now, back in Spokane. And I love having those little, like, kind of quiet nods to Northwest readers.
Yes.
Like, not everyone in the U.S. is going to know what I'm referencing, but you will, and I love that kind of relationship I have with some of my readers, and that was fun to see in the Sasquatch Hunter's Almanac too, with little places like the Moran Prairie Grange and the Palouse and places that people recognize that probably just wash over other readers' heads,
Sure.
But,
so what I haven't finished, and I'm dying to finish it, but I'm about a third of the way through. What should I be prepared for? Should I be prepared for anything? I don't want to give away anything.
Yeah, well, I would say it's an extremely dark book, and to really brace yourself for that darkness. It's really, I consider it a book that's meant to take a reader by the shoulders and really shake her more than it's meant to be like this beacon of hope. So it's very honest.
Yes.
But for me, even though it's set in 1944, for me, it's really relevant to our time now. It's extremely timely for everything happening.
Yes.
And I think it's really important that we look at our history in a straightforward manner, and our present in a straightforward manner, so that we can try to create something better, more compassionate.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So what are you working on next?
Well, just this morning I was working on a novel that is really strange. It's going to be very an absurdist novel, and is kind of based on Vladimir Nabokov's Invitation to a Beheading, which is one of my favorite novels of his. I'm a big Nabokov fan, but this is maybe going to be kind of a discussion of in a veiled way social media and womanhood and all of that. And then I also have another novel that I've started about a woman who falls in love with a praying mantis and wants to marry a praying mantis, and how upsetting that is for her family. And it's not going to be a monster-sized praying mantis. It's just a regular old praying mantis. And they're going to have about a year-long relationship. And, I started thinking of it because after writing this dark book that I think was kind of bigger on a political scale than anything I've ever written, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to kind of tunnel in and write like a love story. But it's going to be my style of love story, which is going to be really messed up and strange.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. So what, the energy for 2 projects. So when you say love story, where would you come up with the idea of the praying mantis?
Well, boy, I can't remember quite how I came up with that idea. I've had it for a little while. I started it a few months ago. And I think the first thing I was thinking about was I've always been fascinated by that woman who married a roller coaster. Have you heard of this story? And she had a ceremony. It, for some reason, made like some major news outlets. And it was because she just really felt like she would never have the love, of another person like this love she had for this roller coaster. And she goes on that roller coaster all the time. And so, yeah, there's a picture of her in her wedding gown, like standing next to the roller coaster. And I found something so weird and so human in that. And so like I know it's confusing to people and so strange, but there's a sweetness to it.
Sure.
And I think I was probably researching a praying mantis because I saw them at Riverside State Park when I was with my kids in the fall, right before the weather really turned, and they were all over the place. And I've never seen so many of them in this area. I mean, I didn't grow up seeing a praying mantis.
Occasionally,
maybe very rarely, but it wasn't. And we must have seen 3 on this one walk we were on, and I think that's when the wheels started kind of turning. And they're just so fun to read about. They're strange, intricate little animals, and I think they'll be really fun to describe and visualize. And this woman's, I think there's going to be some, very serious reasons why this woman, of all things, chooses to fall in love with a praying mantis. But so we'll see how it turns out. It may be one of those ideas that doesn't go anywhere, but so far I've had fun working on it.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about a short story that I heard you read one time. This was last year at Humanities Washington Bedtime Stories, and you read this story of, and correct me if I don't get all the details right, but the balloons lifted the house.
Yes, all the houses lifted into the air like balloons one day, but several of the houses stayed on the ground, or a few of the houses, not the majority of them, but several of the houses rose, and people started living a very happy life in those houses up in the sky, and they started feeling like we don't need the planet at all, we don't need Earth, and then, but there were people left behind on Earth in these, and there was forest fires. I wrote it right after we had a major forest fire season.
I've never forgotten that story.
Yeah.
It's occurred to me several times since I heard it over a year ago. So is that remaining a short story? Or?
It is, and I have a third project, which is a collection of short stories too. And that story did end up getting picked up by Catapult.
Awesome.
And it's available online. And I changed it. It used to be called Lighthouse. And now it's called Residents of the Air.
Gotcha.
So if you go to the Catapult website, you can find it. But that was a really fun story to write, and also is very much about how we can become really complacent and not take care of people and leave people behind, and how we need to kind of wake up and be there for one another.
Resonated with me. I have not forgotten that story.
Cool. Thank you.
That's fabulous. So I wish we could talk more, but our time is already up, and I'm a little bit glad so I can go finish reading the book. But
well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on today, and thank you for writing and continuing to write. And I can't wait to see what comes next, and also appreciate all that you do for the libraries, for literature, for Spokane, and just for being you, Sharma. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jane.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, we'll see you then on Library Out Loud.
Library Out Loud is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Library Out Loud is brought to you by the Spokane County Library District and STCU. Go visit and explore your local library today.